Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Daily Show. I'm your host, Lindsey Randall, and happy to be joined today by our wonderful legal expert, Mr. Ron Davis.
Thanks
Hi,
for
Ron.
having me.
It's always a pleasure.
Likewise. Yes,
Great to see you. You're looking very dapper today.
I've got court.
Well, that's understandable. And why do you have court today?
I just, hey, you got to get to court. I'm a litigator.
Yeah.
So some days I get to be relaxed, and other days I'm in a suit.
Dressed to the nines. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm a casual kind of guy. I mean, a lot of attorneys wear suits all day long. I quite frankly, like to be relaxed. I like my clients to be relaxed around me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it makes them a little more relaxed if I'm kind of wearing something more casual.
I agree. Well, you look very nice today.
Thank you.
It's great to be here with you today, talking about a very important subject for the state of Florida. So I wanted to bring up it was a new study that just came out, and it's from the website, floridadaily.com, but a new case study from the Florida Chamber Foundation highlights growing workforce challenges within Florida's aviation industry. And I had no idea. It talks about that it supports, the aviation industry supports over 2 million jobs in the state of Florida. It makes up 13.5% of our state economy. I had no idea that our aviation, I knew that it was a big, part of our economy. I had no idea that it was that big. Were you shocked about that too?
Not really. When you think about the mouse and you think about all the tourism, you got Miami, with the international travel, Disney.
Mickey Mouse, my favorite.
If you're talking about aviation generally within Florida, the number doesn't surprise me. I think a lot of us think some of the smaller aircraft, the puddle jumpers, and we kind of tend to take the commercial airlines out of it, and then you think it's a much smaller number. But in the overall, with the amount of tourism that we have, the amount of travel in and out of the state, the number doesn't surprise me. It certainly shows that it's an important aspect of the Florida economy. It
does. When you factor in Orlando with Disney and Universal, you factor in Miami. That's a huge international hub as well. It actually does make sense that it's so high. I think what is disturbing is the fact that so it talks about this study talks about how we have this huge part of our economy that aviation is underscoring here. It's a key economic driver. However, the problem is that they're seeing more and more people retiring and fewer young people getting in the industry. So there's going to be a huge, what would you say? Just a disconnect between, there's a huge gap, but there's a disconnect between people that think that they need to get in and there's not the people to serve.
And this highlights the whole trade school issue, right? You would think that, at least conceptually, I would think that employment in the airline industry would be a lot of mechanics and so on and so forth come from the military. It's where they get their training and they get out. Is that, I may be wrong, but because I know a lot of them go into federal practice, but I also know a lot of them, when the Air Force pilots, when they go out, they get into the commercial airlines. I think what the article's talking about, though, is more of the mechanics, the handlers, the things that keep the airlines going behind the scenes. You would think that the military would do that, but again, it highlights we have a problem, it seems to be, and it's countrywide and in the state, in this industry, we don't have enough people who are interested in that training. It's maybe less, it's that, I guess, focusing so heavily on that 4-year degree, and then you're losing the people that make it all run.
Right.
So I guess the question is, how do they recruit those? Where do they go to recruit those? Because the sexy part of it, right, is the pilot.
Exactly.
And I don't want to be a mechanic. Well, but there's a lot of people that do, and maybe if high schools and other, the secondary, education began to offer these programs, people might be, dip their toe in it and say, wow, this is really what I wanted. I think there's always that affordability issue, but trade programs, trade schools are such an affordable options many times, an affordable option. Maybe the airlines could work in conjunction with the state, develop these programs, from the high school on, apprenticeship, so on and so forth. But clearly, if Florida's economy is almost 13% reliant on this, we better do something.
Real fast.
Yeah.
I wonder how many years we have left until that gap is going to widen so much that we start having some real significant problems where it's not because the airlines are having problems. It's because we don't have the infrastructure in place, the people in place to run the airports, to fix the planes, et cetera. So I do agree with you. I think that it's an education issue. And so we need to start really focusing on trades in really middle school, and because by high school, a lot of kids have already made up their mind if they're going to be college bound or if they're going to be, trade school bound or military bound. So I think in middle school, that's where we really need to focus on that and have people come and, there should be something in the Department of Education, I think, that really highlights it and starts talking to our kids.
And we talked about this on the Ed Dean Show with Cornerstone Classical Academy. You all have started to develop those home ec and workshop type programs, trying to bring them back into the system. When I was in school, I graduated in '86, and that was a staple, right? You had home ec, and then you had the workshop. Of course, people are always losing their thumbs and fingers, which may be why it went away, because kids will do dumb things. But we've moved away from that, and we've almost become snobbish on the issue of school. We've convinced ourselves our kids must have this for education. It's the only way their lives get better. But in the meantime, the trades have really taken a hurt. And then you've got students out there with astronomical amount of debt that college degree they pursued is never going to pay out. So, maybe there's a way to reach out to them and redirect them back in there so that they're not out that. Maybe a little loan forgiveness. There's incentives to try to get people back. I'm not hearing those as kind of things that are being tossed, but there's so many options that we can do in the state of Florida that will guide people back into the trade programs. I honestly think loan forgiveness is one of those ways. I'm opposed to it from a governmental institutional standpoint, but as an incentive to get people to change careers, do something that's beneficial to the state of Florida. Hey, if it keeps the planes coming in, the tourists and the money and the tax dollars, we should be doing something to make sure that we've got the people trained to do it.
Well, and you're right about the domino effect that it would have with all tourism in the state of Florida, which would be a huge, terrible impact for us. I do believe that it's got to start early, educating students about what the options are that are out there, because I know when I was going through, I only heard about one option, which was college and military, which are great options for some kids. But I think the trades are something this article highlights that they are necessary. You can go through a program pretty quickly with not $90,000 worth of debt when you get out. If we want to incentivize students to do it, I do agree there could be some loan forgiveness, some sort of bright futures for them as well. And I think that could fix the problem really quickly. When you know that you can get out of high school, let's say you don't want to study economics, or you don't want to become a doctor, you don't want to become a lawyer, but you love working with your hands, this is the perfect avenue for that. So I'm excited about the possibilities, but I'm also concerned about that we're not being proactive enough in our state. And it really comes down to the districts, but it trickles down from FDOE as well.
What I want to see, what I don't want to see, and we have to be very careful, I think, how you approach it, is what I don't want to see is what we've seen in the college system, where money becomes so readily available for these programs that they just raise the prices up beyond that because there's money coming in. I think if we're going to go that route, and I think we should go that route, we need to think about how people pay for these so that they remain affordable. We don't want to run into the same situation where you're getting a bachelor's degree and you're $80,000 in debt, and you've got to go through an apprentice program for 3 or 4 or 5 years where you're not making much. Eventually you do, but how do you make ends meet if you've got crippling student loans? So I want to see kind of a better approach to the trade programs. I want to see a smart, I guess not better, a smarter approach. Have it so keep it so that it's affordable, because trade schools are generally so much more affordable than the 4-year school, just even on an 18-month basis.
Right, and shorter, like you said, 18 months versus 4 years.
But if you start throwing money, like we always do, just throw money at the problem, all it's going to do is make it more expensive. Then you're going to price out those people that you're trying to get back in.
Right, and then we're going to end up in the same situation that we're in now.
Yeah, just be smart about it, but let's get it done.
Yep. Well, we will be following this article closely, this topic closely over the coming months and years, see how our state responds to this growing problem. But it's been a pleasure talking with you about this.
Glad to be here. Really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for joining us again for another edition of the Florida Daily Show. We appreciate it so much and look forward to seeing you next time.